What's up, y'all? Digibro here. I'm in a vlogging mood, so expect a few in a row. First, I want to talk about anime as culture. See, in my last video, I talked about the idea of anime as counterculture and presented a fairly one-sided argument for the idea that anime could be a countercultural movement. And the main reason I wanted to make that video was to address the way that I critique certain shows and certain characters from a perspective that people often say that I have a very Western perspective. Well, they don't often say that, but every once in a while someone says that I'm misunderstanding Japanese culture, and I wanted to present the idea that anime isn't always about reflecting Japanese culture, that oftentimes it's directly in confrontation with it, and also that American culture isn't so different from Japanese culture, both in its in our main culture and in our counterculture. Now, I got a lot of comments on this video that were kind of unsure of whether or not anime could really be considered a counterculture, whether or not all of it's like that, or even most of it, or whether all fans come from that same perspective. Which is very fair. I even had one video response from someone arguing about why anime culture has gotten to be a lot more mainstream in recent years, and I completely agree. Which is why I said it was a very one-sided argument I was posing in the last video, because it was sort of all of these vlogs really are sort of thought experiments. It's more me presenting an idea and giving some grounds to consider that idea, not necessarily to say this is totally how it is. But anime as counterculture, while a fascinating idea, is certainly not the goal of all or even most anime necessarily. Obviously, all the stuff like the classic Shonen Jump stories, which are world famous everywhere in the world, liked by normal people all over the globe, highly celebrated works, are not counterculture, nor were they ever trying to be. And even among the otaku-oriented stuff, I don't think all of it is going for that, which is, I mean, kind of the point I was making, that when it's not countercultural, sometimes it can be annoying to me when it's trying to play too hard into a cultural idea that I don't necessarily agree with. But that's kind of neither here nor there in a way, because as far as anime being counterculture goes, I heard a noise in the distance. I definitely think that in the era of Otaku no Video, anime culture, being an otaku, was something that was harder to be. It was more frowned upon than it is today. I think that over time, even the craziest of otaku culture has gotten to be far more normal. And I think that's because of it being so represented in the media, where, in the early 90s, a big part of why otaku was seen as such a negative thing was because of this murderer who was known as, like, the otaku killer. Like, they really played up the fact that he was this otaku loner guy who killed all these people, and it made, otaku a scary thing for normal people to look at. It much in the same way that gaming was looked at in the 90s, when you had the Columbine shooters, and everyone making a big deal out of the fact that they played Doom. Like, it's that same kind of thing where there was a sort of panic about it in the 90s, but then in the 2000s, that stuff kind of got normalized, and there was so much more of it, and it's so much more everywhere, that it's hard to look at the same way. And I think there was a moment that I sort of saw this shift happening, which was with Densha Otoko, or Train Man. And I think I've mentioned this in a video before, that, like, Train Man was this story about this like, two-channeler, this otaku guy who, I think he stopped a girl from being molested on a train or something like that, and she kind of, like, gave him her number or something. Don't quote me on the story. I never actually watched any of the Train Man incarnations, but the important part is that it was like a love story about a guy who asked the internet for advice on how to date this girl, and they ended up, becoming a happy couple in the long run. And it was a very popular story, which had an anime adaptation, a manga, I think a novel, and a live-action film. And I think that stories like that are what normalizes cultures and identities and makes it so it's okay for people to be certain ways. A lot of the same way that I think that's what happened with gay people in the last 15 years or so, was that we got all these TV shows like Queer Eye for the Straight Guy and Glee that got really big and had all these gay characters and made people sort of watch it and realize that gay people are normal, or that they struggle with the same things that we do and have the same problems. So, and now we're in a time where in the U.S. gay marriage has been made legal everywhere, and gay rights are on the rise, and we're trying to make the same thing happen for transgender people too. But maybe we need some of this. We need some transmedia stuff to come out and make people realize what trans people are going through, and make it seem more normal. But that sort of happened to otaku culture in the mid-2000s, where there was more and more stuff sort of explaining it. I think Genshiken is another great example of something that made it that just kind of showed what otaku were in a very even-handed light. And I love looking at the progression that Genshiken made. I keep pointing back because that's it right there is Genshiken. The first 3 volumes were about a club of otaku in college, and most of them were guys. And then after most of them graduated, they started up Genshiken's second season, where it's almost all girls in the club. And I think it speaks a lot to what otaku culture has been doing over the last 10 years, where there's been this broadening of who it is, and a lot more women, a lot more fujoshi and stuff have been appearing in the culture, and making it more gender diverse and stuff like that. I think that's a big part of what's been going on in anime culture. And obviously in the US, anime has gotten to the point where most people know what it is now. Most people have seen a few anime, either growing up or through Netflix. Attack on Titan is fucking enormous. You can find products for it in all kinds of fucking regular stores just out and about. It's not hard to come by. So yeah, I think things have changed a lot from when I was a kid, when I was growing up, where, these days, fucking comic book movies are the norm, stuff that was nerdy in the 80s and 90s is not nerdy anymore. And I think that the idea of unapproachable things is diminishing, but we still have new things that keep popping up, furries are still looked down on by just about every other nerd culture, or bronies are as well. There's a lot of these, smaller things that still haven't had the big normalization period that something like anime has had. And I think that for the really hardcore otaku, for that really hardcore culture, there's definitely still some stigma attached, I don't think we're ever going to lose the stigma attached to liking lolly stuff, that's never going anywhere. And for a lot of people, even watching this video might hold that stigma against people who are into lolly stuff, that's the level on which it can still be considered an abnormal part of culture that won't ever probably be normalized. At least I doubt it. So, there's definitely a balance here. Anime's not all counterculture. Not everyone who likes it is trying to go against the norm by liking this other thing. But that seed and that root is still in there, even if we were comparing it to punk and punk music, punk eventually became punk rock. Everyone listens to Green Day, that's the root it comes from, but now it's a mainstream culture product that everyone can appreciate and identify with. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't still have some semblance of that root, a lot of the people who are into a band like Green Day might still feel some of the things that people felt in the punk movement way back in the day. It's just a different kind of thing, a more mainstream version of the same emotions, making those emotions easier for more and more people to relate to. So this just gets into the boogie pop thing that I talked about in my invitational art video, which if you haven't seen, you should, because I'm starting to think it's probably my most important vlog I ever did. So Yeah, hopefully that clears up some of the things I said before and just makes it more evident that I don't really think anime is like nearly as much about counterculture as I probably made it sound in that video. It was more presenting the idea of anime as counterculture. Thanks for watching.